Hello everyone. I'm gonna go over a game I played just a few hours ago. I just finished in the Croatian League, the 5th Croatian League. I had white pieces against Livic Ranko, and he's about 100 points higher rated than me, and I actually got to prepare for this game in the last few days. I found 10 or 20 of his games from 2010 and 2011, so not very recent, but still I had an idea what he would play against e4, what I usually play with white. And he plays the modern defense or the Robac, sometimes transposing to the Pirc, but usually after e4 he will play either g6 or d6, so I knew what to expect. And I made a stupid mistake. When I came to the tournament venue, I analyzed the positions which I had prepared with one of my friends to see what he thinks about them. And during the time we were analyzing, some guy came to our board and said, and we were in the corner whispering, but still some guy came over our board and said, oh yeah, that's an interesting position. I didn't think much of it at the time. 20 minutes later, when I came to sit down on my board to play the game, the guy that was standing above us was my opponent. That's what I figured out. So he knew exactly what I was going to play because I was showing my friend the positions which I had analyzed. I was trying to surprise him with c4 in this position, and I wanted to play after e4, g6, d4, bishop g7, c4 and get those aggressive positions on the queen side. But once he saw the exact position and I knew that he saw what I was planning against the most aggressive move black could play, I wasn't feeling that comfortable. But when we started playing, after I played e4, he thought for about 15 minutes and in the end played d5. So I guess I won the psychological battle, but still a very important lesson is never analyze what you're about to play in the tournament hall. That's just stupid. After d5, the Scandinavian defense, I played e takes d5, he took with the queen, and I never played the line with knight to c3, the main line of the Scandinavian. I played the Mieses-Kotroc variation with knight to f3, not gaining a tempo on the queen yet, and usually playing c4 to evict the queen, but I think he wasn't prepared for this line. He played g6, trying to enter what he knows best, but the position which arose was actually better for white. White is one or two tempi up for not much, and black just gave away a few moves. And by the way, in all my games I'm going to go over the moves alone without an engine, because this is the first time I'm looking the game anyway. I just finished, so, and in the end of the video I will go through a brief engine analysis just to see where I went wrong. And since if you've seen my last week's game, it's on the channel, I was defeated because of my own cowardly play, and I didn't have a plan. I played too passively in a slightly better position, and that's why I ended up losing. So today I decided to play aggressively and either win or lose honorably fighting. So I decided to play a fighting game. And after g6 I played d4, he played bishop to g7, I played c4, gaining a tempo on the queen. Now I don't think that queen to a5 is good, as in some Scandinavian positions, because the bishop is now on g7, and he played queen to d8. I think that's the best possibility. Here I played bishop to e2, trying to develop as soon as possible, knight to f6, knight to c3, and usually in this position he has a problem developing his b8 knight, and I'm sure that if at any point he develops it to c6, then I can push d5. I just have to be careful about the bishop being open, and perhaps knight takes e5 will work if I try to evict the knight further with b4. So I was calculating all of that while he was thinking, but I think he couldn't have played knight to c6. I'll check it later with an engine. Here he played bishop to d7, which I didn't think was such a good move. I would have preferred bishop to f5 if I was him, because I'm never really going to push g4 or play knight to h4 yet. So I think this is a much more active square, especially because the knight can't go to c6, so the knight would be good on d7. I played h3, which I thought was too passive, but I wanted to prevent any of his pieces from pinning me on g4, so it can't be that bad. Knight to a6, he decided to develop this way, and now he's constantly threatening knight to b4 and some checks on c2, so I had to be careful, but I didn't think that was too much of a threat yet. Bishop to e3, he castled, and here I played queen to d2, and I still didn't decide where to put my king. I was actually planning to castle queenside throughout the entire game, and I think I now have a slightly improved weird King's Indian by transposition. The only thing is that I've traded my e-pawn for his d-pawn, but I'm several tempi up and his knight is stupid on a6, and my king is safer despite still being in the center. So my plan was to castle to castle queenside, play bishop to h6, exchange the bishops and push my pawns up the board and just checkmate him. But here he played queen to c8, and this got me thinking, this is actually another waste of tempo, and I couldn't understand what this move was doing. Perhaps if I castled kingside, he would sacrifice on h3. That was one idea, but still, with my bishop pair, I don't think he has that much if he sacrifices the bishop. And the other idea I just couldn't see. I don't know what this move was about. If I was him in this position, I would play c6, knight to c7, and try to control d5, but hey, he played queen to c8. So I decided to exploit that underdeveloping move, and he actually took away a square for his rook. And they played knight to e5. And this way I'm definitely getting the light squared bishop. The only square to save the bishop is to retreat it to e8, which would lock down the rook as well. And of course, if he goes to f5, I can now play g4. If he goes to e6, I can play d5. And he has no squares on this side on the board. So I'm definitely winning the bishop, and I liked my position now, and especially because I opened up my bishop pair, and at any time if I castle queenside, I'm going to be better. If not better, I'm just going to have a stronger attack. In this position, he played rook to d8, which I didn't like either. And here I spent the majority of my time in the game. I thought for about 15 or 20 minutes, and this is, I think, the crucial position, and I was considering castling kingside, castling queenside, or playing h4. And of course, castling queenside would probably lead to me playing h4 anyway. Castling kingside would give him the opportunity to sacrifice, but I don't think he would have. And I would have had a much more passive position. And h4, actually, I liked the most, so I ended up playing it. The only problem I had after h4 was bishop to g4, attacking, trying to trade my bishop, but then I saw that I could just play f3, and I liked my position. So I played h4, which is aggressive, and okay, I wasted the tempo playing h3, but I still think I'm much better here. Or at least I have much better attacking prospects. Here he played knight to b4. Once again, I don't think this was such a good move, because he isn't really threatening knight to c2 check yet. If he had developed his bishop to f5, then he would have been threatening this, but now I play a3, evicting the knight, knight to c6, and now I took the bishop, knight takes d7, because this gives me time now to play h5, which was the main purpose of h4, and I actually get to open up his position completely. So after knight to c6, knight takes bishop, queen takes bishop, and d5. Of course, now my d-pawn is attacked 3 times, so I have to defend it. Defending it, there's only one move actually, that's knight to b5, which is absurd, because after a6 I lose the pawn. So I played d5, which I think is the best move. And I was calculating knight to e5, of course, that's the only square for the knight if he doesn't want to retreat to b8. And in all variations after knight to e5, I liked h5, and I didn't see what black has, and the knight is very much misplaced on e5, but he ended up playing queen to e8. And this defends the knight indirectly, of course, because my queen is pinned and I can't take the knight. So I just played h5. And here he played a very good move, what I thought was a very good move, e5. And it's double-edged, of course, it's relieving the pressure of my d-pawn, but it gives him his knight an outpost on d4, which I think was a great idea. But I now take on g6, h takes, and from this position on, I thought I must have been so much better that my position was almost winning. And first of all, at some point he's going to have to waste the tempo moving the knight, that's clear. And secondly, I managed to weaken his kingside structure completely, and after I castle queenside, I'm going to be much better. And I saw this move, bishop to h6. And I played it. I thought this would be the most active, and of course he can't take the bishop. If he takes the bishop, then after bishop takes, queen takes, he would have to save the position with knight to h5. But after knight to e4, threatening checks, which can't be taken, of course, because of queen checkmate, I thought I must have been winning. Another variation which I was looking at after bishop to h6 was bishop to h8, which I thought was the best for him. But here I was just going to castle queenside, and he would play knight to d4 probably, and I would play king to b1, just not letting him fork my queen and king. And I think I would be much better here. Another possibility which I was calculating after bishop to h6 was knight to d4, but after bishop takes g7, knight to b3 trying to attack my queen, just bishop takes f6, and this is now an indefensible mate in one, with the rook on h8, so this wouldn't work for him. And the outpost he created, I was happy that he couldn't use it for the next several moves, and I think I managed his move e5 pretty well. After bishop to h6, he actually played queen to f8, defending the bishop, and now I have to take. I don't think there's any other option. Bishop takes g7, queen takes g7, and this is the move I'm most proud of in the position. I'm not sure what the engine is going to say, but I think this was a great idea. I played f4, and of course his threat is still to play knight to d4 at some point. So I wanted to prevent him from doing that, and I played f4, and I calculated all the variations. Actually, I took another 20 minutes to half an hour in this game, and by the way, it was 90 minutes plus 30 seconds increment per move, starting from move 1. And after f4, first of all, I was calculating what happens if he doesn't take. If he doesn't take the pawn, then he will have to move the knight at some point, and I am threatening to take on e5. And after he takes with the knight, then I have several tempi with queen to f4 and attacking c7 indirectly. So I would at least win the c7 pawn. And he actually took the pawn, which I thought was best. And after e takes f4, I took with the queen. Queen takes f4, and from this position on I was very happy because of course he now has to move the knight and he is losing c7. I'm just going to show you another variation I was calculating. Before I played f4, I calculated this move for him, knight to a5, and I was looking at this position: f takes e5, knight to b3, attacking queen and rook, e takes f6, queen takes f6, and now queen to d1, and after knight takes, queen takes, I would have two pieces for the rook, and I think I would be winning in this position. So I don't think he could have played knight to a5 after f4, so he definitely has to take. I think this was best. So e takes f, queen takes f, he played knight to a5 here, and I just took the c7 pawn, and by this point I was sure I was going to win the game, because my central d5 pawn is a passed pawn, and there isn't really a way for him to stop it. And of course in this position, if he plays any rook to c8 attacking my queen, I can just take the knight on a5, so he has to play knight to b3. And after knight to b3, I changed my plans and I just played rook to d1, saving my rook, and after b6 I played castle short, and here I was very happy with my position. I just didn't see any way for him to attack me, and the knight is misplaced on b3, even though it's in my position, it doesn't do anything, so I was very happy. And here he played knight to c5, I played queen to f4, attacking the knight on f6 and the f7 pawn, and just centralizing, preparing to push d6 and d7, and to play bishop to f3, discovering an attack on the rook, or bishop to g4, just supporting the queening square for the pawn. But in this position he must have had a blackout, and he completely missed that I was attacking his knight for some reason. After the game he told me that he didn't miss that he saw it, but then he started calculating and then he lost his train of thought. Anyway, in this position he played rook to d7, and I just took the knight. I took 3 or 4 minutes to see whether I was blundering something, but I wasn't, so... here he played queen h6, queen a4, queen to g7, and I here played bishop to g4. And if he hadn't lost the knight, I think the game would have been over sooner. It actually created a lot of complications for me, because when I was a piece up, I'm a piece and the pawn up here, so I just wanted to trade pieces, and if I didn't try to trade pieces, I could have won much faster. So yeah, but anyway, he played rook to e7, I played d6, rook to e5, knight to d5, threatening a lot of checks now, and I love my position here, there's nothing he can do. f5, bishop to f3, now threatening a discovered check, discovered attack on the rook if I check the king. Here he played knight to e6, and I was calculating one variation here. I played queen to h4 in the end, which I think is the best move, because I'm threatening queen to f6 and a lot of checks in this position, and if he plays g5, then bishop to h5, etc. And there are a lot of attacking possibilities after queen to h4, but I was actually calculating after a knight to e6 to take this rook, and after queen takes... after queen takes, okay. If the queen takes, then I was going to play a check with the knight and just grab the rook, and I would have a pawn, a knight, and 2 rooks for the queen, and that's, I think, too much. So I would have won anyway, but I played queen to h4, and he played rook to d8 in this position, which I didn't think was good. And here I realized that the best move had to be knight to e7 check and starting an attack, but I decided to just give up the extra pawn I had, and and stay a piece up, and queen to h4, rook to d8, and I decided to play queen to f6, just giving up the d6 pawn to exchange the queens, and then I was sure I could win, so there is no possibility of a blunder. Knight takes f6, king to g7, knight to d5, here he took on d6, and I played knight to f4, exchanging pieces tactically. Of course, if he takes my rook, then I take the knight with check and exchange, and if he takes my knight, then I take the rook, so he has to do something. He played knight to d4, I played bishop to d5, attacking his knight once again, knight to b3, rook f to e1, forcing a trade, king to f6, rook takes, king takes, knight to d3, now preventing his king from entering any squares, but coming back to f6. If he goes to d4, I didn't calculate exactly which discovered check I would have played, but I'm sure that it would have been winning for white. So he went back to f6, rook to e1, taking the e-file, and now from this position I was expecting him to resign any second, but he actually played on for another 30 moves, and I'm slightly embarrassed not to have converted this position earlier, but he is a tricky guy and he managed to find some good moves. He played a5 here, knight to f4, and now of course knight to d4 doesn't allow me to enter the e6 square, which was the whole plan, and here I played a few pointless moves and before knight to f4, so here I started thinking and I found a plan which would inevitably lead to a victory and not give him too many options. I played king to f2, g5, knight to e2, knight to b3, king to e3, and here he played b5, which I deliberately allowed, and I saw that I would temporarily go a pawn down for the piece because I played knight to d4, and now he has to exchange a piece. He has to take b takes c, and now I take the knight, he takes the bishop. I played knight to d2, attacking the c4 pawn, which he can't really defend because I can attack it with rook to c1 and with king to d4. So he played rook to d3 check, king to e2, rook to d4, rook to c1, rook to g4, I have to defend the pawn, so king f2, rook to d4, and now I take with the knight. And in this position I was very happy because I saw an exact plan of how I was going to win, and my plan was to get the knight to b4 after he pushes a4, which he will have to do because it's attacked by the knight and he can't afford to defend it. So my plan was to get the knight to b4, provoke him to push his pawns because he doesn't really have any other moves, then play knight to d3 and attack the pawns. So that's exactly what happened. Actually, he played f4 immediately, rook to c2, solidifying my second rank, not letting him enter it, a4, he had to defend, knight to d2, king to f5, knight to f3, gaining a tempo on the rook, rook to d5, rook to d2, challenging the rook, rook c5, and now I started to maneuver my knight to b4, which is now inevitable, and there is nothing he can do to stop it. Knight e1, g4, knight c2, rook e5, knight to b4, and now I was happy, there's nothing he can do. Of course, after g3 I can blunder a mate in 1, if I go to f3, then rook to e3 is checkmate, so king to f1, king to g4, and now rook to d4, this is the second part of my plan, and now the pawn is immovable completely, and I just have to play knight to d3, and the reason I wanted to get my knight to b4 is that after I play knight to d3, it's defending b2, it's covering c1, king is covering e1, the rook is covering the whole d-file, so he doesn't have any infiltration squares, nor can he attack my b2 pawn. So at this point I was sure he was going to resign, but he didn't. He tried rook to h5, getting behind my king, but this just doesn't work. I played knight to d3, rook to h1 check, king to e2, rook to g1, but he doesn't have time to take the pawn because rook f4, king g5, and now king to f3, attacking g3, defending g2, rook d1, and now just a couple more moves were played. I'm not sure why he played on. Yeah, I'm going to highlight the move which I missed here. This is what I realized the second after I played rook to d8 here. I wanted to check the king from h8 for some reason, which was a stupid move. Had I played rook to d5, this is just completely winning and he can't defend the mate. So this is just a mate in 1. There's absolutely nothing he can do, but for some reason I found rook to d8 much more appealing. But however, it doesn't matter, it didn't last too long. These were the final moves. I started to march my king to the queen side, and I just wanted to pick up the a-pawn and have a safe conversion with the rook cutting him off from the e-file. And here he blundered, he played king to g6 and just missed the fork. So here he finally resigned, and I'm sure he wouldn't have resigned until I made the queen had he not lost his rook. So anyway, I'm happy with the way I played. I think I played a good game, at least I played aggressively with h4. And I'm happy with how it went. Of course, I could have converted easily after he blundered the piece, but I'm sure that after queen takes c7 I would have been winning anyway, and Had he not blundered his piece, I think I would have been better from this position on. And after queen to f4, what can he do? Okay, I'm going to turn an engine on from the start of the game now, just to see how I did. d4, bishop to g7. This is all okay. Black has a worse position, but not that much. Bishop d7 is a huge mistake. This is now, you can see the evaluation bar on the right side of the board. So this is now plus 1.2 for white. This is too passive. And it said c5 actually. Yeah, breaking up my structure. Okay, that makes sense. Bishop to d7. h3 is a mistake, but not that much big of a mistake. Knight to a6 is okay. Bishop to e3 is another mistake. It wants me to play castles, but I didn't want to castle kingside. I wanted to attack him with the h-pawn. Black castles, queen to d2, this is okay. Queen to c8, yeah, queen to c8 is a mistake. What? He should have played either c5, bishop to f5, or bishop to c6, which all makes sense. After queen to c8, he's much worse. Knight to e5 is not that precise, but it's okay. Rook to d8. h4. Oh, okay, now the position is equal. It doesn't want me to play h4. I should play rook to d1 or castles or bishop to f4. But I think h4 gives me a lot of attacking chances, so let's see. Knight to b4, a3, knight to c6, knight takes d7, queen takes d7, d5, queen to e8 is a mistake, okay, h5. Okay, now I'm much better. Once again, he shouldn't have allowed h5. So now e5, h takes, bishop h6 is the best move, great. Queen to f8 is okay. Bishop takes g7, queen takes g7, f4. It wasn't the best move I thought it was. Best was to castle queenside or to play queen to e3. But what does he do against f4? Okay, the engines say knight to a5, but I was calculating that. And after f takes e5, it says knight to d7. How is this okay for black? Don't I just push e6 here? No, it says queen to f4. Why would I play queen to f4? What happens on e6? Okay, my advantage is gone. Not e6, but... Okay, wait. Knight to d7. I should play queen to c2. Yeah, I don't like this position. Why would I? But anyway, knight to a5 was the move, and I should take on e5, and he plays knight to d7. But anyway, after bishop to h6, queen to f8, bishop takes... Okay, okay, yeah, f4. So it's an okay move, but it wasn't the best. He played e takes f, which is now almost lost for black after queen takes. And now he should have played g5 here. That's a good move, gaining a tempo, but I still take on c7. Or do I? Wait. g5... Not queen takes c7. Oh, it's still okay. But anyway, after knight to a5 in this position and queen to a4, queen takes c7, knight to b3. This is a mistake because of rook to d1. b6, horrible. Castles. It likes castles kingside here. Okay, a change of plans was good. And I'm sure I'm winning here. And it's plus 2.3, so... And after knight to c5, queen to f4, yeah, he missed a piece. He should have played knight c to d7. But still, the position is lost as I thought so. And the conversion wasn't as elegant, I must confess, but still, let me just check this position if here... Okay, if I could have played queen takes e5. Queen takes e5, queen takes e5, knight to e7, check, king to f7, and bishop takes. Okay, this is plus 7, still much better. I could have played this, because I couldn't see a way for him to stop my pawn from queening, but queen to h4 is better, the engine says. But still, I think it was a great fighting game. I was actually sorry that he missed a piece, that he blundered his knight, because we would have had a much more interesting fighting game, but this is a victory as well. And we actually, our team won as well. We played on 6 boards and we won 4 against 2. Okay, everybody, thanks very much for watching, and stay tuned for more chess by professional players, which I will be covering in the videos to come, and I will play my next game next Sunday in the 5th Croatian League. Thanks very much. See you later. Bye.